Okay.
So, hi guys, welcome to another video on our channel. Like a lot of you have been asking, we now have Sujoy with us, who is working as a psychiatrist in the UK. And he is here to give us all the information about all the pathways to working as a psychiatrist in the UK, and all of the questions that all of you have been asking about the psychiatry pathway. So I'll let Sujoy introduce himself now.
Hi everyone, and hi Anirudh. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. So I'm very happy to contribute because I remember that not so long ago I was in the pretty much same situation, and was very worried about. I had wanted to come to the UK, and it was a lot about PLAB or Royal College or USMLE or what should I do, and those confusions. So hopefully now things are much clearer for me, and I'm happy to help people. So to just give a brief introduction about myself, I finished my MBBS and MD in psychiatry, both from India. And after finishing my MD, I was doing post MD work experience. And that point of time, I took my Royal College exam. So what I did is the MRC Psych, which is the Royal College. I did the first two papers, the paper A and B. And before I did the CASC exam, which is the practical aspect, I came over to UK as a clinical observer, or what is called as a clinical attachment. And after finishing my attachment, I took the CASC exam and cleared it. Then subsequently, I started applying for jobs. And unfortunately, this was the time when the COVID pandemic started. So I should have been in my job much earlier, but I have recently just about one and a while, little bit while back, I have come to the UK. And now I'm doing my what is called as a non-training job, or a specialty doctor post in psychiatry. And yeah, so I hope that after this I would go into ST training, or even I'm not sure of the path exactly up ahead, uh, how to become a consultant or what to do further on. But let's see, things will clear up gradually. So yeah, that's me.
That's good. Welcome to the country, first of all.
Thank you.
I hope you've arrived here in good weather.
Yes, yeah.
Brace yourself for the winters. So I think we'll go ahead and speak about what pathways there are to enter the UK to work as a psychiatrist, and what exams you need to take, and if you can take different exams, and what level of seniority you can work at.
Mhm.
Um,
Sure. So yeah, I mean, the pathways to UK for psychiatry is pretty much similar to what is for the other subjects, I would say. First thing is you have PLAB. PLAB is what is many of the people who many of the people, or I think most of the people take this exam, and I think people will know about PLAB even much better than me. I've not gone through that route. So you finish your basic degree, then you finish your internship, and then you have the PLAB exam, and you go ahead with it. PLAB is also, I mean, from what I have understood is, as I said, I have not done PLAB myself, but from what I have understood it, it's better to do PLAB in the way that you get exposed to the system in the beginning itself. You start off at what is called as a basic core trainee level, and gradually you
yeah,
can go up ahead. And it is, I guess, economically more, I mean, cheaper as well. And if you do PLAB, then you start with the core trainee one, which is the first year of what you could say residency or training in the UK, and you do the entire pathway. You finish the entire core training, specialty training. So what you get at the end is a CCT, or certificate of completion of training. However, this rule has also been changed. Even people who who do not go for PLAB, or who go through the Royal College exam and then take their specialty training sort of midway, they are also going to get CCT now for some specialties, as I understand.
okay.
But then again, PLAB retains that, I mean, that advantage that you write in the system right in the beginning, and it's easier for you to go through that. I mean, it's easier for you gradually get accustomed to this system.
Yeah,
So
I think as a general rule itself in any specialty, if someone is thinking of a long-term career here, I think the better,
exactly,
the earlier you enter the system, the better it is. And I think
better it is.
same for
Exactly.
psychiatry as well.
Exactly. So that is there. The second thing is you have the MTI, Medical Training Initiative, and that gets you a GMC registration and a Tier 5 visa to work on. And again, so this is also sort of a gradual I mean, these this is for specialist people, like people who finish their MD psychiatry, not at the MB post MBBS level. So that is also a training, as the name suggests, it's a training initiative. You get into the job, and you it's actually supposed to be done for 2 years, and then people would come back. But it's during these 2 years that people finish their Royal College exam and they apply for their ST training, or they may apply for another jobs and then sort of stay on in the UK. So that is for those people. MTI is suitable for those people who finished a specialist degree back home. The
Right.
third route which I have taken up is, again, you finish your MD or MS or whatever it is. Of course, in case of psychiatry, it's MD. Or so you finish your MD psychiatry degree back home,
Yeah.
and then you take the exam, which is membership of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. I'm sure many of you are aware that there's a Royal College for all different disciplines: physicians, OBG, MRCM for emergency medicine, and so
Yeah.
on. So you take that exam. There are three parts of that. One is the paper A, paper B. Now after COVID, I think it's everything has gone. I had taken exams in the non-COVID time, so I think now everything has gone online, if I'm not mistaken. So that's, you finish those two exams, which are theory based, paper A and B. There are different topics. For example, paper B covers statistics and things like child and forensic and specialized psychiatry, whereas paper A deals with general psychopathology and psychopharmacology and things like that. So
Okay.
you finish those two papers, and then you go for the CASC, which is the clinical assessment of skills and competencies. That is the nothing but the practical exam. Again, earlier you used to have centers in Singapore, Hong Kong, UK. Now again, everything has shifted online.
Okay.
So we can talk about the cask a little bit. I feel that the cask exam is the one which uh, you don't I mean, of course you need all your theoretical knowledge, but
Yeah.
cask exam, the pitfall for many, especially international medical graduates, is that we lose on the communication aspect. Means,
Yeah.
so you've got something called as you have your knowledge and how much you know about it. The second thing is the communication. So cask is a OSCE sort of, I mean, it's an observed exam. You don't have to present a case. You
Yeah.
have a scenario, you have a situation that it's written on there, that such and such candidate, there's such and such patient, or there is a relative of a patient who has been diagnosed with XYZ, some schizophrenia or some disease, and now you please go inside and you talk to that patient, elicit the history, or talk to the carer and tell them what they can expect, what is the treatment of schizophrenia, or any other mental disorder. Or there will be something like a what we call as capacity assessment, that this is a person who has been uh, facing some difficulties in his finances. How would you assess his capacity? So they'll just give you a scenario. You have to go in and you have to talk to the patient means it's obviously an actor,
Yeah.
and then the examiner will be judging you, and there is no interaction between you and your examiner. The
I
interaction is between you and the person.
The person. Yeah,
And
I think that's a common way to conduct the OSCE exams here in a lot of other specialties as well.
Mhm,
And I think it's quite vital to have to get that communication right, like you're saying. I
mhm,
think there's a similar pattern followed in the PLAB and in some sections of the MRCS Part B exam as well. So I think,
mhm,
like you said, for all international medical graduates, I think along with knowledge, it's
mhm.
vital to concentrate on communication. Um, that's right. So yeah, moving on how you prepared for the cask exam or even the written exams. What
So
sources did you use? And
so I mean, as far as sources are concerned, there are a lot of question banks out there. You have both question banks as well as written material. What I did is that there is a I had actually formed a small group, and we got together, because I feel that when if you have one or two persons with whom you are practicing, then it's sort of easier for you. We pooled in our money as well, and we got access to the courses with the written material and the questions. As far as the MCQ parts are concerned, there is some part, some, I mean, those, there are different courses. You can take any one of them. Some courses are relatively cheaper than the others. Some courses have more material, but they may be expensive. So you can take a choice, or you can make multiple as well. So MCQ exam is just, I mean, you study all the written material and then you practice. I
I
mean,
see.
you solve MCQs yourself. with your group or alone, the more you practice, the better it is. It's like any other exam. There is no negative marking in the, I don't know if they have changed the pattern now, but as far as I know, there's no negative marking, and time is quite sufficient, so that is not a very big issue. For things like statistics and all, of course, you have, as I was saying, paper B, the second paper, almost 40% odd is statistics. So that's a very major thing. You should know the statistics portions very well, because this is something which we may tend to forget and all, especially if we've cleared our postgraduate exam and then we don't encounter this, isn't it? So that you should be a bit careful. Otherwise, the CASC exam, as far as it is concerned, again, there are books, there are books with scenarios, there will be lots of videos online, or paid courses will be there, which you can watch the videos and then you can understand how they are doing it. But the most important thing is CASC is just practice. Now, whether you are physically sitting with a person or you're doing it through Skype and like this, and you are interviewing it, I mean mock interviewing him, that is the most important thing. And the good thing is that if you pose as the actor, you pose as the scenario, that you are the person with XYZ mental disorder and the other person is a candidate who's interviewing you. So even in that itself is a learning experience. You
Yeah.
acting as a standardized patient or acting as a role player, it will teach you how to interview the patient also, because you can empathize better. And
I see.
always get into the habit of basic things, very simple things, like when you're entering the station, or I mean online, so there is no entering the station. When you're starting your interaction with the patient, introducing yourself, that I am Dr. So and so, all that will be written, the name of the patient will be written, asking the patient, are you Mr. XYZ, can I call you Mr. This, or can I call you by your first name? So some these basics things, the
Yeah.
moment you start the interview, introducing yourself, asking the patient's consent. If it's an agitated patient I mean agitated role player who's walking around, please sit down, I can see that you're very worried, but I am here to help you. These basics, sometimes we may tend to suddenly start off, and that's not a good thing. The examiner can see very well in the first, I mean, the cast station is of 7 minutes odd, but in the first couple of minutes it will be evident to the examiner whether you are a you are able to handle this or not. And it's okay, even in the 7 minutes, if you can't cover all the things, nobody really expects you to do that, as
I
long as you've shown good empathy and understanding to the patient. So that's it, I would say. I mean, that's the basic things. You can always target your preparation as per the actual station involved.
Right. So I think the advice from you basically is form a group and practice as much as you can
As
with
much
your
as you can.
peers. And how many stations do you have in the CASC exam, and how long does the exam last?
So it was I remember, I think there are 16 stations. When I was doing the non-online, I mean the in-person format, there used to be 16 stations, and there were 8 stations in the morning, 8 stations in the evening, and the stations at time used to vary. There were some stations where you had sort of 7 minutes, and some stations you had 10 minutes, because the task required was different. But it was otherwise an all day sort of an exam. So morning session, eight stations, and afternoon or evening session, you can say 8 stations, a total of 16. It's not, I mean, it's all right. Once it sounds tiring, but once you start with it, the first station you may be a bit nervous, but as you start with it, you'll not there isn't much time to think about it. Whatever gaps you have, you are thinking about the next station, then or you start with your next station, and it just it goes on very smoothly once you start it.
Right.
So that's not an issue.
Right. The other thing we wanted to discuss with you is about a clinical attachment. So I understand before you actually started your formal job here in the UK, you experienced the UK system as through your clinical attachment. So can you tell us a bit more about how you applied for this attachment, and what is the ideal time to take this attachment, and your experience basically?
Sure. So clinical attachment is basically a time where you are an observer. You're not doing any active work. I mean, you're not allowed to do an active work. You come on a visitor visa. Yeah, I mean, now look, visitor visas and from a lot of countries have been cancelled, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
attachment will become very difficult to obtain. I don't know if they are still giving out. So that is one thing which you may need to look into. But anyway, let's forget about COVID. Looking in general, what the attachment can do is, so attachment basically helps you to understand the system. See, you have no liability. You
Right.
don't have any responsibility or liability. You can be there, come back at your own leisure. So that is a pressure-free time. But the attachment, the main important thing is that you should observe properly. I mean, uh, as I said, the post is that of an observer, so at least the observation part you should do properly. How they are talking to patients, what is their system like. If you are allowed to do some supervised, you will be allowed to do some supervised work. You get some chance to interview a patient, or take a history, or do an examination, whatever it is. So you should utilize all those points properly. You should be interested for your own sake, and then if the people or the consultants or whoever you are working with, they notice you, later on it can materialize into something good. Later on you could look at a job from that particular trust or hospital. You could get good references, and it counts.
Yeah.
Even if it's a passive role, it still counts on your CV. It may not be as important as a UK job experience, but it will still have some value. And the only thing is that uh, you have to spend money from your pocket. I mean, usually attachment is something where you're not, there won't be any relocation packages and things like that given. It's not a job. So for a flight, visa, accommodation, the spending part you just have to see. But I would say if you can do it, go for it. It's not an absolute necessity, but it will help you, and you can time it like that. Like what I did is I finished my theory papers, and then I came to UK to do an attachment, and at the very end of my attachment, my CASC exam was there. So for the CASC exam anyway, I had to come because that time it was all in person.
I
So I clubbed it together, and I finished my attachment. I finished my CASC exam, and then I went back. So you can just time it like that. One thing I would just say is that the attachment does not end once you have finished. Once your attachment is over, like once you finish your attachment, which is usually, I would say, I did it for 3 months, but people have done up to 1 month. Also depends on how much exposure you can get. Once you finish your attachment, you write it up, like reflections or my experience of an attachment, what I learned, what is my perspective, and you can make a write up of it and send it to the consultant, or attachment programs might have a coordinator also. You can send it to them, so they'll appreciate it. It will be good that you have learned something from it, and later on when you are appearing for a job interview, hopefully you've cleared your exam, appearing for a job interview, they will ask you that, if you've done an attachment, so what's your understanding of the UK NHS psychiatry system, or whatever it is that you are giving, and you can tell about those reflections. So it's not that the attachment, just because it's a passive role, doesn't mean it doesn't have any value. So it's, in my interview, I was, almost all the interviews I gave, I was asked this question, and since I was able to describe my attachment and what I learned from it, I think that was a important point in the interview in me getting the job also.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable information. I think that, I understand there are a number of advantages, in fact, of doing the clinical attachment. Number one, it helps in your CASC exam in the sense, like you mentioned, you witness real life,
Interactions.
consultations, and then
Hmm.
that's what you understand what is expected from you in the exam. And plus, you build on references and you build on your understanding of the NHS, which will help you apply, in your job interview as well. So I think that's very valuable information. Right. So, you've gone through all the hurdles, you've cleared all the hurdles. Now that you're in the UK, what avenues are there ahead for someone like you who's now in the UK in a
Uh,
specialty doctor role?
so it depends on what you want. Even look, this part is something I'm not very sure myself. This is something I have talked to many people. This is a personal preference again. So one thing is, you stay on a specialty doctor, or what they call as a SAS role, and that's usually a permanent post. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
you have to do anything after this. You can work with like this, and you can continue to be it. If you want to progress to a consultant, again, as I was saying, you have to get into ST training, and if you get into ST training, then you can go ahead and get your CCT done, and you're a CCT based consultant.
Right.
Or if you um, don't want to undergo a training pathway, and you feel you're not ready for, excuse especially those people who have come at a very senior point in their life, and they don't want to go through training all over again, there is of course the Caesar pathway. So you have to accumulate all your evidence, working in your I mean, non-training job. And if you continue to work in a non-training job, the pressures would be lesser because you don't have to submit any ARCP reports and things like that, competency progressions and those kinds of things. So you can collect all your evidence and then submit it to the GMC for the Caesar, for getting a Caesar, becoming a consultant through the Caesar route, which is the certificate for eligibility into the specialty register. It's not absolutely equivalent to CCT, but as far as I understand, at least in the UK, there's not very much of a difference between a Caesar and CCT. Of course, you want to go to the other countries, then the CCT is better. And so these are the three basic things. You could stay on as a specialty doctor, go for training, become a CCT, or compile your evidence. Then again, in a few years and or a couple of years or something, submit your Caesar and become a Caesar. I understand there are other, posts or other opportunities like teaching clinical fellow, academic fellow. I'm not very sure of these points. The point is, I mean, these avenues. The point is, you must do your research. This is highly individualized, and I don't think it's fair to say that this pathway is better than that pathway. It's up to you whether how you want to do it. I'm sure whether you talk about things like salary and all that, there will be differences, but at the end of it, with the like with great power comes great responsibility. With great salary will come great responsibility as well. So it depends on how much responsibility, how much pressure you are willing to take, and you should be fine either ways, whatever pathways you take. It's not that one person is above the other. It's all right.
Yeah, that's true. And just to briefly touch upon the psychiatry training in the UK, how many years is the training program, and how difficult is it to enter if if you've already
Mm.
done some training in India?
So it depends on the type, the part of the type of the discipline that you are going for. General adult, there are some dual programs. Then there is child adolescent. Then there is higher training in psychotherapy. Those kinds of things.
Okay.
So after, if you enter at an ST level, that is after MRC Psych and all, it will be 3 more years or 4 more years.
Okay.
I'm not sure of which how many years is for each specialty, but on an average it will be that. And of course, if you enter at a PLAB level, then you have to add the previous 3 years as well. So it will be
The core
six,
training
seven
level. Yeah.
before training. Yeah, before completing Royal College. Difficulties would vary according to again the specialty you are choosing. Psychotherapy, I understand, is very difficult. There's something called as a competition ratio. So it's a
Yeah.
ratio of how many seats are vacant is to how many applicants apply for it. So if it's a high ratio, means more, there are more applicants than seats. So if the
Yeah.
ratio is 2,
Sure.
means there are double the applicants of the seat. And psychotherapy is some type of a ratio like that. The last I checked, learning disability was a relatively much easier to get in. General adult was easier to get in, but it all depends on your portfolio. ST interviews have they assess your portfolio, they give you a clinical scenario, and then they check your performance in the MRC Psych and CASC exam. So all these things add up. It really depends. I would say psychotherapy is a very tough to get in from what I have seen, and the rest is up to your personal CV and how well you have built it.
Good. Good. So I think thanks a lot, Sujoy. I think you've answered pretty much all the questions that I think and would come to anyone's mind who is planning a career in the UK. I'm sure if there are any further questions in the comments, or if we come across any further questions on our Facebook page, we'll forward them to you, and I'm sure
Sure.
you'll be able to answer them for us.
Definitely, it was
Thanks
my
a lot
pleasure.
for talking to us, and it was a pleasure. And
Yep.
all the best to you in your
Thanks.
career ahead.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody gets their desired positions. All the best to everyone as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.